Hi, I'm James from Bellrock. I help leaders understand the intersection of where risk meets people. Today, I'm joined by longtime friend, collaborator, and I guess you guys would be technically still a client as well, Darleen Taylor from First Chance. So, Darleen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and glad to be having a good old yarn. So I want to launch straight into the icebreaker question and just go, so if you're at a barbecue and you're chatting to someone that doesn't know anything about the sector you work in, how would you answer the question, what do you do, Darleen?
What do I do?
Yeah.
I typically answer that one by saying that I'm a part of a team that gets to support children with a disability and their families.
Yeah.
And then the conversation, tends to take a bit of a turn from there if somebody's interested.
Yeah.
And really it's, by the time we drill down to it, it's about, they say, oh, that must be so rewarding. And I say, it is super rewarding.
Yeah.
I don't get to work directly with families anymore, but I love to hear the stories from the team.
Yeah. Okay. Do you get many people that kind of go, oh, what do you want to work there for, that kind of thing, or not?
I don't really.
Yeah.
To be fair, I don't know whether they're just being polite.
Yeah.
Or what that's about, but I think that over the last probably 15 years in particular, I think that disability awareness has increased tremendously in our country, and so I think that there is a general level of greater awareness.
Okay, well that's good, and I mean because you guys are very specialised in paediatric NDIS and nothing else, and I often wonder, do you think that's challenging, but also almost has been the key to your long-term success at the same time? Because how you see a lot of, particularly I would say NDIS organisations, that they start growing and diversifying, and next thing you know they're off doing something that's outside of their core skill set. Do you think that's helped you guys? Because obviously you guys are a hunter institution, and certainly I'm biased because I think you guys are awesome, but I think you do what you do very, very well and have done so for many, many years. And so do you think that specialisation has helped you achieve that, do you reckon, rather than trying to do a million different things at once?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, back particularly when the NDIS was in its trial phase, and we were the first lucky early childhood intervention service to roll into it. We faced that kind of crossroads decision around, and there was lots of kind of theories and speculation and decision making for lots of organisations, as you say. And we decided, and our board very much decided at that point in time, that the best path forward for us was to keep the specialisation. So, every time we do the strategic planning kind of process, we revisit the conversation because it can be a bit limiting to be specialised, but we really feel like we wanted to do what we do well. And without getting distracted around a whole range of things that might send us in different ways and different learning pathways. So, and I guess, we do have other programs other than the NDIS that are funded by the state government, different funding bodies, the Smith family, but they all remain in working with children. And that's what we're good at.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. Oh, and look, I would, what do you call it? I'm just going to stop there for a second because I was struggling over my words. I was going to say, I will vouch for the fact that you guys do really well at that. That was what I was trying to get at, but okay, right, we'll pick that back up. I'll just go. Yeah, so I think anyone that knows you guys in the region would certainly share my view that you guys do what you do very, very well. And I guess it is interesting that we probably have seen a lot of organisations turn into these gigantic monoliths, and sometimes the question is always, does the service level drop? Have they lost? Have they gone off doing things that are outside of their core expertise? And I think sometimes what I wonder is that when you look at traditionally charities, people would sort of think, and especially in the block funding days, it's a charity, and they almost expect it to be run inefficiently because it's a charity. Whereas if you apply that like private business mindset to going, all right, well, you've always got to return a surplus because, it's a surplus in the charity sector, not a profit. But also when you see private sector organisations that potentially end up bankrupt because next thing you know, they start off making one thing over here, and next thing you know, they've diversified into a space they're not adequately prepared to handle and something goes really, really wrong. And so I guess that was the question there, because I think it's interesting with you guys that you have stayed very specialised, and I definitely think there seems as though that can be a model that works very well given the complexity in the NDIS, and it only seems like it's getting more complex as the day goes on, or as the years wear on. So I guess on that note, because that certainly anyone that does work or support the sector will know that it's an immensely challenging space to work in. What keeps you excited and motivated to keep doing what you're doing? You know, what gets you up in the morning to you know, fly the flag for First Chance?
I've always been somebody who's wanted to work in, whether you call it a for-purpose sector or a helping professional, or whatever the kind of current terminology is that you choose. I find I have enormous passion for feeling like there's something that I can do that can help make a difference for somebody else. So we had a team development day recently, and Viv Allenson, who was previously from Aroba, came along, and she was incredibly energising in what she shared with the team, and she was encouraging us to see ourselves and call ourselves and name ourselves as difference makers. And I quite liked that.
I like that.
And I guess the hope would be that you're a positive difference maker, not just a difference maker. So I love being able to go, how could I add value to this? So whether it be to an organisation and how we operate, whether it be to, you know, at an operational level, a system, a process. I like to, I believe in what we do as an organisation, and so I like to feel pride in what I do. And so I think that that's something that I can tick those boxes. With First Chance in particular. I've been there for 16 years now. Wow. It's the longest I've ever stayed anywhere. And I think that part of that is I like change. And so it's one of those things about be careful what you wish for, because there's so much change all of the time. But I guess it keeps me, my job's not the same as it was 2 years ago. It's not the same as it was 16 years ago. So that's good for somebody like me. Because I'm always challenged around what's next.
Well, and certainly I think, you know, the sector you work in as well, being NDIS specific as well, and you're not able to necessarily access funding or pull rabbits out of your hat from over here. I would say it's necessitated you probably remaining agile and innovative, because it is such a challenging space to work. Well, that's my thinking. But yeah, I guess then if we move on to the governance challenges, because obviously this series isn't about the technical side, but what are the sort of, you know, big headline issues you see for the sector in terms of whether it's the broader governance piece, or what are some of the risks that you see emerging for the NDIS sector in the years ahead?
I think that there's a really long list. I think that
I'm sure there is.
I think that for all people in all sectors, I think there's the kind of obvious cybersecurity and AI risks and opportunities that come from AI. And I think it's about having the kind of resources and a little bit of courage to be able to kind of step into that and go, okay, how can this add value to what we do? But how do we not let it become something that's, you know, something we've got to mop up after? So I think we've been very fortunate. My board has had some people on it that have been very focused and passionate around that, and so I've had to learn a lot about that in the last couple of years. I think from an NDIS perspective, the change is relentless. So it's about well-being for staff at every level in any organisation, I think, because we're always having to get our head around what's the latest change, and we don't typically get a great deal of notice of change. So I was saying to somebody the other day, you know, with 11 days to go before the new financial year, we were told that, you know, the NDIS was making a unilateral change around charging for travel.
Oh, travel. Yeah, I remember we talked about this. Yeah.
Enormous implications from a funding perspective, from a cash flow perspective, from a systems perspective, and so it's really tricky. You know, we'd already locked in our budget, which most organisations would have as well, or should have at that stage, and so we've had other kind of changes on the eve of. So it's hard as somebody who likes, I'm a planner by nature, and so it's hard to sometimes feel like you can trust what the plan says because you just never know what's coming next.
Wow.
But having said that, I'm so fortunate I have a brilliant team, and we come together and we go, how are we going to do this? How are we going to cope?
Wow.
How are we going to manage? I think that, there's other issues around cash flow, particularly because we work with children. Lots of times, particularly over the kind of December to February period, lots of families want to have a break, which is absolutely understandable, and I get it.
As in a break from services.
Break from services. And so that's tricky from an income perspective, because I think that one of the things that perhaps isn't understood is that, if we've got a cancellation or, there's a break in service, we don't have any income other than from, a couple of other little programs that we've got. So I remember a colleague of mine in the very early days went along to a school to talk about the NDIS, and she said to the group of teachers, imagine if your pay was dependent on how many children came to school today.
God, I like it. That is quality.
And she wasn't in any way
she wasn't
trying to be
taking a stab at teachers.
No. Not, she is she's a teacher herself by background, so she was absolutely what she was trying to, I guess, communicate is, yes, the $193.99 rate can sound like it's a tremendous amount of money. But when you've blocked out for a couple of months of a year where your income is very, very minimal, it actually, all has to make sense in a financial setting.
Yeah, it gives you the lumpiest cash flow as well.
It certainly does.
Yeah.
It certainly does. That's where we're pretty grateful to Cinch for helping us
no
keep on track
plug
of
for
that.
you, Dave.
There's, we've got portable, what are we doing? Portable long service leave starting in 2 months without really a great deal of definition around what that's going to look like.
Okay.
We've got super payday, all of that stuff that, government legislative changes that then just, you've got to work out, okay, what do we do with that?
I know. And it's what I struggle with particularly, because I've talked about with a lot of people in this series so far, the fact that it's like society feels a bit fractured at the moment. There's lots of sort of hostility and what would you call it? People being pulled apart rather than brought together. And then on top of that, you've got a lot of political, I wouldn't necessarily say it's specific interference, but political, you guys being used as political footballs at different times for different kind of, I guess, agendas, for want of a better term. And I just think it's interesting that I don't think the general public necessarily knows how intensively that can impact you guys when there, let's say there can be different changes at a government level or an NDIS level that, as you said, then next thing you know, you've got a significant change 11 days before the end of the financial year. Because I knew about the travel change because we'd talked about it. I didn't realise it was 11 days before the end of the financial year.
Give or take.
Yeah, well, not specific, but it's like, holy dooly, like really? Like, that's my response to that. And so I just think it's a challenging space to work in. And I guess coming back to another question, what got you into the sector in the first place? Like what led you, because obviously you're a CEO now, but what led you into that space in the first place, Darleen?
Yeah, so my professional training and background is as a social worker.
Yeah.
So I started my career in local government, in community development roles, and I really, really liked and loved. So I learnt so much. I learnt a lot about systems and processes and that sort of stuff from local government. I also got a deep appreciation because of the role that I was in. I got a deep appreciation of the not-for-profit sector.
Yeah.
So I was on a number of boards
Yep.
because they were always scrambling for people and was part of my role and responsibility.
Yep.
And that gave me a really good insight into, you know, fast forward all of these years, some of the issues are still the same.
Yeah.
And so when I so I lived in Sydney for a long time, and when I relocated back to the Hunter, I had a friend of mine who tapped me on the shoulder and said, "There's his job at Samaritans, and it's managing some disability services, and I think, you know, you should apply."
Oh.
And I can't remember whether it was illness or whether it was a death in the family, but something happened and I missed the deadline for the application, and I thought, you know what, not meant to be.
Yeah.
And then I got another tap on the shoulder and they said, "We didn't find who we were looking for. Do you think you'd still be interested?" So I said, okay. And so I went along, and I think from having moved from that kind of policy, community development role into the sector, I just fell in love.
Yeah.
I fell in love with the opportunity to really, it's that seeing the difference that you make with the people that you're supporting directly, or the staff that you're trying to support and train to do the very best job that they can do. And so, and I also like the creativity. So, you know, you can, and particularly in, whilst I started at a much larger organisation in a management role, I find the size of First Chance particularly appealing because we're not so big. We don't have, you know, kind of Sydney-based masters or anything like that. We can just go, oh, someone comes up with a great idea. Let's see what we can do with this. So I really like that. I like being able to play a role around, you know, using some of my skills, knowledge, talents, whatever you want to call it, to forge change. And so sometimes that's at an individual level might be a staff member, it might be how I've supported them around a family, but also at that systemic level. So being able to, I love networking. So I love, you know, I get the privilege of working with a whole host of organisations just like ours, and so, you know, forms part of a consortium, both locally in the Hunter. We've always had a really strong connection to Prelude, and what was Early Links, now part of Connectability, and we work together really collaboratively. And so sometimes people kind of shake their head and go, but you're competitors, like why would you do that? And it's like, we're only competitors if you want to be. There's still stuff that we can do that helps one another, and so so we do that now on a statewide basis as well. So I really enjoy learning from all of those other people and, you know, contributing where I can.
Nice. Well, Kimberly's joining me next week, so watch out.
See if she gives me a mention.
Exactly. Nice. So I guess, look, Darleen, as usual, we could probably chat about all manner of things and go down all sorts of interesting rabbit holes, particularly about the NDIS, because I just still think so much about the comparison of the old ADAC model to the NDIS, and I wonder about in years to come, you know, is it going to survive 50 years? Will it evolve into something else? Will it cease to exist and they'll revert back to a block funding model? I don't even want to sort of hazard a guess or an opinion on that.
I think we're at a turning point around that now, and so I don't know whether you've heard in the media recently kind of references to the Thriving Kids Inquiry and the foundational supports, and so I guess there's still lots of detail to be ironed out, but effectively what the government is saying is that they're going to carve out children 0 to 8 from the NDIS, where they've got what they call low or moderate support needs. There's no definition yet around what that means, and they're going to put them into a different pathway and system. So that, from the New South Wales government position, will be a commissioned service, so time will tell. So we're very much at that crossroads now. I think there's so many questions still to be answered, and I think, you know, from a parent's perspective, I get the uncertainty and the unease, and particularly then around, well, okay, so then my child gets to be 8, what happens when they're 9?
That's
they've got
right.
low to moderate support needs, what happens then? Because those needs don't always magically
just resolve.
So still lots of work to be done, I think.
Okay. It's just it's just so interesting when you think about it in terms of thinking about the other countries. I think it was the UK and Canada that are both running comparative model. Is New Zealand running a model like the NDIS or not?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. But just seeing that, it seems as though they've all, like if the Canada one I do know about is they've all encountered major challenges around these structural deficits. And so to be honest, I don't know what's landed in terms of Canada, but I definitely think, look, at the end of the day, if all of us would agree that you want to be able to make sure that the most vulnerable people in society are given adequate care and access to supports to the best possible, degree, and that we're also promoting, because there's all I remember all this sort of reading about all this like dignity of risk and inclusion versus, help me with what's the other word that everyone trips over. So you've got like inclusivity and integration or something like that. And so the concept of like an inclusive approach to the community, I like that, because it's like, I think that's, certainly the people with disabilities I've worked with, they don't want to be sort of made to be special or be put over there or whatever. They want to be able to just be involved in society just like everyone else. And I like the potential of the NDIS to be able to do that, but it doesn't seem to necessarily always eventuate that way. But I guess time will tell.
I think one of the tension points is that, early intervention is broadly and widely understood to be critical and important, particularly for children.
Yeah.
And so, having worked with adults adults with a disability for a long time, it was one of my motivators for coming into the early intervention childhood space, is because I met family after family who would say to me that they had maybe not regret, they had some guilt, worry, concern about the fact that there weren't early intervention services available when their children were, adult children were younger. And so they grieved for what their child could have become.
Right, okay. Oh, that hurts. That's hard to
absolutely.
hear. Yeah, wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those learning moments for me where I kind of went, wow, that's amazing. And I think I need to go and hang out in that early childhood intervention space, because that's where we can make a really, really big difference. But it has to be resourced. And I get that, no country has an infinite bucket. But I think that our greatest test as a community is how well we are supporting people who are more vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And if we can't do that, then really what's it about?
Yeah, I agree. I know it's sort of not a direct quote, but I feel like there was some, sort of cliche that someone rolled out a few years ago in America, or it was probably older than that, about the whole, you set the standard of, let's call it, the quality of a country by how they look after their most disadvantaged. And so, there's a whole lot of places you could go there, but I think that I agree with you on that it's like, it shows the overall sort of, let's call it, ethics of a country when you see how they look after the most vulnerable. Or don't in some cases. So wow. Well, then last one, just bringing it back to you again personally. So the whole, what are 3 things you'd put in a note to yourself that you wish you knew as a young adult that you now know, and personal, professional, a bit of a mix of both? What do you reckon you'd throw in that letter, Darleen?
I really loved this question because it really challenged me to kind of go, what do I know?
It's not a trick.
It's not a trick.
I actually came up with it because I thought that would be a question. I wanted to ask that to myself. So I guess there's probably a million things that I wish I had have known. But 3 that I could think about were, and one that I share with new staff, particularly newer graduates as they come in, is that it's actually the challenges that we learn most from.
in our life. So whether that be a personal challenge, whether that be a professional challenge, whether that be a family that you find you are challenged by, you don't learn as much from people who are just, you know, and it's nice to have people that are nice to you all of the time, but it's the challenges that actually make us work the hardest and we learn from. And so some of the people that I've worked with, be they families or be they staff, I've learnt a lot from people that have challenged me, sometimes in a way that, you know, might have seemed harsh or unfair at the time, and still may seem harsh and unfair, but I took something away from it and I learnt something from it.
Yeah, okay, that's great.
I think that the other one is I wish I had written a note to myself to tell myself to make more time for fun, not just hard work. I've always been somebody who's found it tricky to kind of go, and now I'm finished. And now I will leave work. And so don't get me wrong, I still enjoy and make time for fun, but I think I've gotten better at that as I've gotten older. Especially cricket. I think I've gotten better at that as I've gotten older and balancing that out a bit better.
So what about the third one, Darleen?
The third one I think I'd choose is around feedback. And this was something that we spent a bit of time as an organisation focusing on last year, because I think that feedback at various stages of your life, particularly in that professional sense, can be a bit challenging. And, you know, you might start out a bit, you know, younger in your career and you're like, you know, you don't want people to know that you don't know stuff, or that you're working it out as you go along. And I've come to believe that feedback is a form of respect. So even if it isn't delivered in the way that I might like, it's somebody hopefully caring enough about the situation or me that I could think about doing differently. I may not always have to agree with them, but it's an opportunity to stop and pause and reflect on what can I take away from that.
Wow. I mean that's quite brave, because I think, you know, any of us that are ambitious type characters, I reckon there's got to be a common theme that we don't really like. You know, we don't really like being told what to do, but we certainly probably don't like being criticised or given adverse feedback. But I think you're right. It's like it's hard. Well, it sort of relates to your first one in a way, because it's hard sometimes if they're people that you don't necessarily like or get along with. It doesn't mean that potentially they don't have a really valid point to raise. And I know I struggled with that in the younger part of my career, that, you know, some of the best feedback I got was from people that I actually really didn't like, but it was valid feedback anyway.
I remember I used to feel a bit defensive about the whole thing, and now I can't say I never feel defensive about it, but typically I'll take a breath and go, thank you for caring enough that you would want to, and trust me enough that I'm going to have listened, and that, you know, I should always try to do better.
Yeah, nice. That's actually a massive, like, reverse power play. I like that. Like, thank you for caring enough about me to do it. It's good, I like it. And then just mic drop.
Not quite what I meant, but you take it how you take it.
Well, look, it was entertaining anyway. But yeah, I think, look, it's a fascinating area, because I just think where that question came from was absolutely myself, but then also so many of us, you look back and so many of the people that I've chatted to in this series so far, it's like you have this, we're all in this space where you've got these really sort of aggressive, ambitious 20s and 30s, and then as you come into your 40s and 50s, you've got a different outlook on life and what's important and what you prioritise. And I just think it's interesting to see there's different variations in people's responses, but it's amazing the amount of consistency of types of response people are giving me to those three questions. And I just think it tells you something more broadly about, I guess, all of us that work in this sector, or maybe our personality types that tend to end up in this space. Or God, you could get very Freudian on that, but I won't. But yeah, I just think it's fascinating, and I guess no doubt at some point you will probably reach the point where you run out of energy and you want to go and do something else, or maybe that'll never happen. I don't know, but I think it's it's amazing that there's people like yourself and many others that are such long-term, passionate, heart-led contributors to the sector. And I think that that only means that the quality of service for people in our community that need support is there at the level that it should be. So,
thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining me, Darleen. And yeah, I feel like, again, we could roll the camera for another few hours and just move on to T20, anything else like that. Yeah, for sure. But so thanks again, and really appreciate your time.
Thanks, James.